Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Farmer. It's Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day recap for Monday, July 24th. So part of a new week. Let me start the video because I forgot to do that here. Whoops. And there we go. And I've messed up my screen. Very good. So let's get to today's recap. There were, even though today kind of seemed a bit sleepy in terms of price action, there were some themes present, and I will go through those quickly. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purpose only. Please read the full risk disclaimer there. Not giving out any advice or recommendations in this video. So let's talk about that just for a second. I mentioned that the price action was a bit sleepy today. You can kind of see if we look at the 5-minute, candle, or not candle, but the price action for today. We kind of got off the first 5-minute bar was one of the biggest of the day. And then we kind of checked back into support. We rallied. The high point of the day was about right before 2 o'clock. And then we kind of came in. It just didn't feel like the market really wanted to move too much. And we've got so many events this week. We've got the Fed meeting on Wednesday, and we've got a lot of big earnings reports. So to me, this makes perfect sense with all these names reporting this week. Sometimes the market doesn't really, just kind of will want to sit here until we get more information out. Now, on the positive side, I think that if you go back to last week, right, when Netflix and which I want to talk about Tesla a little bit in today's video, but if you go back to last week, right, for some of the big growth or big tech, I know Tesla is not a tech company per se. I guess it's not classified that by the S&P. So I'll leave that comment there. But, this move back on, back to almost the 50-day moving average in Netflix, and Tesla coming in too, I think this is good because it just moves the bar down a little bit lower. I think if these names would have rallied, post earnings and, and had a big move after earnings, then I think the bar would have been set, perhaps a little bit too high. So we'll see. We've seen growth really kind of come in and digest a little bit after these two names reported. And I think that's, if you probably at looking at a lot of growth charts, you probably want that to happen a little bit because you need, for the price action, you need to have a reset every once in a while. Right? You don't want to just see things go straight up because things got pretty overbought. So Microsoft, it's one of the reports that I'm most interested in this week. They're going to report after the close. That's tomorrow. So, you do have a little bit of a pullback. I mean, it's not like, this has been a huge move. So what I always do when I look at when a name is going to report earnings is what has the name done since the last earnings report, and not Netflix, but Microsoft gapped up to about, 294 and has went all the way up to 366. So that's a significant move. So even though it's off the highs a little bit, it's still going to have a really good earnings report. If it doesn't have a really good earnings report, it's probably going to give back a little bit, some more gains, considering where it's come from over the last quarter. So that's how I kind of think about earnings. I look at where the stock has gone, right? Because if a stock runs really hard into its earnings report, it's not going to matter too much if it beats earnings because it's already priced into the stock. That gets the reason why I'm bringing up this concept is it gets confused a lot by younger traders that are just kind of starting to learn a little bit. They'll say, oh my God, the stock beat its earnings reports, and then they look and they're like, well, I don't understand because the stock's down. It could be down a couple percent because it's already priced into the stock. So at this point, Netflix is sorry, I keep saying Netflix. Microsoft is going to have a really good earnings report, but it is encouraging that it is off the highs a little bit. All right. So don't, it's an important concept. Look at where the stock has gone over the last quarter because, there will be a lot more that's priced into the stock versus, going back to last week. J&J hasn't done anything for a while, J&J finally a little bit toppy today, looking candle, but this is a name that hasn't done anything in the last couple of years. So when a name surprises like J&J did, and a little bit better results from some of the banks, right? They have more of a chance to go higher then, right? So again, it's a little bit about probability, about what the stock has done recently. If the stock hasn't done anything and it's a pretty cheap name, and it does something better than expectations, there's a better chance for the stock to move. So looking at the price action, I put together this little dashboard. I know you're not going to be able to kind of see this, but in terms of the levels, but I think this is kind of telling. This is a new index dashboard I put together. Again, this is the white boxes on the screen are the value area for the week, right? So these are all 1 hour charts. From left to right, you're looking at the S&P, then the Qs, IWM, and the diamonds. And what do you notice that's going on here? Because again, the white box, when we're looking at volume at price for the week, right, this is based on last week's price action, right? And if a name begins to trend above last week's price action, right, it has some momentum to it, and it is trending on the short term. So what I see for now is S&P is inside the value area. It did make a nice little move from where it started. The S&P was up for the day. The Qs are still kind of, since the beginning of last week, and basically since those 2 earnings reports, Qs have been out of favor a little bit. They did finish down for the week and are now kind of in some type of digestion zone. Right now, IWM is kind of in the middle of that, right? It started out right at the bottom of value, and was up just 0.25% today, but again, slightly positive, right? And then right now the leader, and again, this is the theme from last week, is that the diamonds continue to move higher, and now we're looking at how many days in a row at this point for the diamonds that have been up in a row. Whoops, got the wrong screen up there. We're looking at, well, I guess the diamonds were down according to this. But this is, I guess, different from the actual average, but I guess just by a hair was down. But prior to that, up 9 days in a row. And so, I mean, that's impressive. And again, it kind of tells you that there's a little bit more of a value trade going on right now. And we've had some breadth expansion. And it's kind of funny because I see some people root for when there's more stocks participating. However, sometimes what that means is the growth stocks, which have been on fire this year, are going to take a bit of a breather. So you have to be careful what you wish for. If you are okay trading a couple financials, or a couple names in energy, right, or a couple names in some other spots like consumer staples, then that breadth expansion is good for you. But if you're just trading growth stocks, then perhaps you don't really want to see that breadth expansion, because that means other stocks, other groups are going to outperform. My opinion is, and I sent this tweet out on Friday. I did not do a Friday video because I was out of town, but from a retail trader's aspect, first of all, there's many different ways to make money in the market. I like it when there are different areas that begin to outperform, because I am not mandated just to trade, in NVIDIA or Tesla or, a couple other growth names. I like when there's other participation, and it's in a bull market too, which I think, looking at the price action and looking at the rotation, right, it does feel like that. And when you see names like regional banks moving up 2.5%, right, there are things that can be done in those places. Energy stocks as well, right? You can make money, and it doesn't really matter, if it's an energy stock or if it's a growth stock. Of course, I favor too, when there's really nice performance out of the growth stocks, and if it's a group of stocks that continues to trend, come into support and then trend again, I love that type of market. But I also do like when there's clean opportunities where you can take advantage of some of these groups. Let's talk a little bit about so actually I'm going to finish this with growth versus value, but I think this was, to me, one of the most interesting trades from last week, right? This is IWD versus IWF, right? And if you note, I think this is just a 1-year chart. And I'm afraid if I move this to 5 years, it's going to take my trend lines out of this. But notice what's happening here. And I'll zoom out in just a second. But basically from the beginning of the year, right? And I've got value in the numerator and growth in the denominator. So value is underperformed for the better part of, for all of this year. But right, things are, get stretched in both directions. And you could see that value is, I believe, is short-term bottoms versus growth. And I think what's useful is when you look at the RSI, right, which does look at momentum, and you could see that there was a bullish divergence for value stocks, right, because value made a low over here versus growth, but the RSI did not. So that sometimes that indicates that there's a short-term trend that is changing here. So that's what we try to do at Tribeca Trade Group, is not get basically cornered into just a few stocks. If there's going to be other stocks that are performing, we're going to take advantage of that, right? So, and here's what the, now I'll move this now that I've explained this. Yep, there goes the trend lines go away on Bloomberg. But, this is just normal, up, down, right? And let the growth stocks rest a little bit. Maybe they'll perk up with earnings. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what some of the big names that are reporting this week. I don't know what they're going to do, but we might be looking at a couple of those names to kind of put on as earnings trades. Also, one of the things that I like to emphasize too, considering today was, a quiet day, this is good to kind of talk about these bigger concepts. But a lot of times what will happen, if you look at what's going on with Goldman Sachs and with Morgan Stanley, a lot of times if you wait for what the earnings are going to be, you will see if institutions are beginning to accumulate some of those names, right? Goldman is another situation that really hasn't done too much. And I think you can kind of look at overall financials as, people have not really piled back into the financials because there's a lot of fears about them. But look at the volume the last couple of days, right, in Goldman Sachs, right? And I do think that this gets up to 363. Now, if you don't want to trade Goldman because it's moved up this much, what I would look at is maybe an ETF like this, right? This is KCE. This is the capital markets ETF, right? This is interesting because if you look at the components in here, there are more asset managers, there's more brokerages, like a Stifel is in here, an LPLA is in here. I think Evercore is in this, and if you look at some of these charts, right, these charts are in uptrends. Evercore looks pretty good. Now, again, these names are all going to report earnings too. Stifel looks pretty good, right? So there's a lot of names that are in uptrends. If you look at the exchange stocks, they look pretty good too, right? SIBO, even though it didn't do anything today, was actually down a little bit, but you got a nice breakout in SIBO, right? I think the CME also looks pretty good too, right? ICE, right? So again, just covering trying to, what I try to do in some of these videos is just broaden your horizons, right? So that so that you understand that there are other stocks to trade and possibly other places to go. All right, so that's the one group that I thought has been very interesting since the last week. Energy stocks are also very interesting, and we could start with looking at the crude chart, right? The crude is actually, and we mentioned this, that it had started to make a move above the value area, and it was in this sideways pattern for more than a month, but it is now back above the 200-day moving average. That's something that it hasn't done basically since all the way back in October of last year. So again, there's I went long some energy stocks in one of my portfolios, BKR, which had earnings last week. This looks pretty good. Weatherford, WFRD. Also, now again, this name's going to have earnings, but this name also looks pretty good, right? We talked about in one of last week's video, call activity in Matador. Sorry, got the wrong name, not Matador, PBF. I was also looking at Matador, but look at this name today, right? And a name that was really hard to kind of make money in growth stocks, right? PBF was up 4.5% and saw some aggressive call activity last week. All right, so that was a name that was on our watch list last week and this week as well. So making a nice move. So these are things, and again, you don't have to fall in love with these names. You could take a 4.5% move and put the money in your pocket and then wait for some of these areas. I mentioned I was going to talk about Tesla, and then I will talk a little bit about because I think Tesla's at a very interesting point. And then I will talk about the star of the day, which was China names. So 269.21, right? That is a level to watch, right? People always get confused because on my Twitter feed, I don't make predictions. I tell you basically where there's a significant level to watch, and then I position around that level to watch, right? I let the price action, right, do the predicting for me, so to speak. Now, again, it's not doing the predicting, but it's telling me enough of what's going on, right? So you had a nice bullish engulfing here. Let's go to the 1 hour chart because we've got something to watch here. And we talked about this on Friday. Of course, it was a little bit whippy, but you did get a trade out of it, right? So this is the 1 hour chart. Came in, took out the second, or actually took out 3 VPOCs, version point of controls on its earnings day. But it looks like it's trying to basically, now that it's had some digestion, shaken out some of the weekends in the stock, right? And now it's trying to turn. And this 270 level, right? So very simply, I want to be long if the stock stays above 270, right? And if the stock, let's say I do put on a trade to go long at 270, I will put my stop probably around 265. And if it breaks back below 265, I'll take that off for a small loss, right? But if it starts to trend again, right? Now, I have that level of 270 that I'm going to be trading against, right? And that's something now and then I can kind of take profits as it goes up to 280, 285, because ultimately I still have a bullish thesis on this stock. I think it goes to 320, right? It still has an 80% rule in effect for this year. So my ultimate price target is 320 for this year. And again, once we kind of come into support, right, which, Tesla broke a little bit further, which sometimes stocks do this, but I do want to see it not only retake the top of value for the month, but also the 20-day and the 5-day moving average, right? If it retakes that, then we know that it's beginning to trend again in the short term, using those short-term moving averages, right? I use them for confirmation purposes that buyers are stepping back into the stock. All right, so that's my thoughts on Tesla. That's how I'm going to trade it. I did not put on anything today, but we were talking about how today, which I thought would be more of a scalping type day versus putting on swing trades, was that type of day. To scalp, and then you can think about swing trades thereafter. So the Chinese internet names, they had a big day today. I don't know exactly what drove these things higher. I know that China has been talking about more stimulus, right? This has been a very difficult trade. I'm covering this because it did see a lot of option activity. So a lot of option activity in the car names, the XPEV, the NEO. Those charts do not look bad. Here's NEO, which had a big day today, up 10% on the day. Really nice and moving above the 200-day moving average. XPEV also looks pretty decent, although it did take out a virgin point of control. The name that I got long last week, right? We saw a lot of bullish option activity, was LI. And I did add to my position today, and I was able to take a target because this name moves pretty nicely, up about 3%. All right. The other names, right, that are in this, I would look at BABA, right? BABA, very simply, BABA has to hold above this prior peak, and then you can possibly target 104. All right. And then PDD is another name too that I think looks pretty good, getting back above the 200-day moving average, right? And again, these names haven't done, I know this name was up 4% today. So if you caught that, beautiful. But over the last, couple weeks to a couple months, these China names haven't done anything. So in the grand scheme of things, you haven't missed anything at all in this group. All right, so basically, that is it for today's video. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, but I think also, I'll say this again, be open to kind of maybe putting on a couple of these things. Like the agriculture group is also very strong, right? DBA, which is the agriculture ETF, this has cocoa and it does have wheat in there. And I think cattle futures, I think, are also in this, right? But take a look at the weekly chart. Right, this had some issues the last time it approached the top of value. This is now breaking through. All right, so we've got something that's changing here in agriculture futures, very strong at this point. Also, one other group that I'm looking at, and I'll leave it here for the video, but the home builders, right? They had this big move down after DHI reported, and it just felt a lot of the winners were being sold on Thursday. But let's see if it can build. Right, DHI, like I said, was the one that had the reversal, but look at it build back up here. So 1.9% today. Another name that I'm watching is Lennar. Right, as long as it stays above 126.30, this may not be a bad little play. All right, guys, that is it for today's video. Again, big events this week. Wednesday, we have FOMC and a lot of earnings reports to go through. So again, what I'm looking for is what names are going to be potential leaders and show momentum after their earnings report. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.